Alfonso Cajero, A Journey into Finance History. Chapter 94, Global Shifts in Trade Policies, 2020s. Reevaluation and changes in international trade agreements and policies reflect new economic realities and concerns over sovereignty and security. The 2020s ushered in a period of profound transformation in global trade policies, driven by a convergence of economic shifts, geopolitical dynamics, and technological advancements. This chapter explores how nations around the world reevaluated their trade agreements and policies in response to emerging economic realities, and how concerns over sovereignty and security shaped these changes. At the outset of the decade, the global economy faced a landscape reshaped by the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic exposed vulnerabilities in global supply chains, prompting countries to reassess their dependencies on distant suppliers. The disruption highlighted the need for diversification and resilience, as well as the importance of domestic production capabilities in critical sectors such as healthcare and technology. Countries increasingly sought to reduce their reliance on single-source suppliers and implement strategies to bolster domestic manufacturing. This shift was particularly evident in sectors deemed essential to national security, where concerns over supply chain disruptions and strategic dependencies drove governments to prioritize local production and stockpiling. Simultaneously, the economic fallout from the pandemic underscored the disparities in global economic growth and development. Developing economies faced unprecedented challenges, exacerbated by disruptions in trade flows and declining global demand. In response, international trade policies began to emphasize inclusivity and sustainable development, aiming to narrow the economic divide and foster resilient, inclusive growth. The rapid advancement of digital technologies emerged as a transformative force in global trade during the 2020s. The proliferation of e-commerce, digital payment systems, and data-driven technologies revolutionized the way goods and services were exchanged across borders. Digital trade became increasingly integral to economic growth, offering new opportunities for businesses to reach global markets and consumers to access a wider range of products and services. Governments responded to the digital transformation by updating trade policies to accommodate the complexities of the digital economy. Issues such as data privacy, cybersecurity, and intellectual property rights took center stage in trade negotiations and regulatory frameworks. The European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, set a precedent for data protection standards, influencing global discussions on digital trade rules and consumer rights. Amidst these economic and technological shifts, concerns over sovereignty and security emerged as critical considerations shaping trade policies. Countries increasingly sought to assert their sovereignty in trade negotiations and safeguard their national interests against perceived threats, both economic and strategic. Security concerns played a pivotal role in trade policy decisions, particularly in sensitive sectors such as defense, technology, and critical infrastructure. Governments implemented stricter regulations and screening mechanisms to protect against foreign influence and safeguard national security interests. Debates over the security implications of foreign investments, technology transfers, and supply chain vulnerabilities intensified, prompting nations to adopt measures to mitigate risks and enhance resilience. Sovereignty concerns also manifested in efforts to preserve regulatory autonomy and protect domestic industries from unfair competition. Trade agreements increasingly included provisions aimed at ensuring a level playing field, addressing issues such as state subsidies, labor standards, and environmental regulations. Nations sought to balance economic openness with safeguards to prevent exploitation and maintain control over their regulatory frameworks. The reevaluation of trade policies in the 2020s led to the evolution of international trade agreements, reflecting the new economic realities and strategic imperatives of the decade. This chapter explores the key developments in trade agreements and the shifting dynamics of global economic governance. As multilateral negotiations face challenges, countries turn to regional and bilateral trade agreements as alternative mechanisms to promote economic integration and manage trade relations. Regional trade agreements such as the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP, and the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, gained prominence as vehicles for enhancing market access, reducing tariffs, and harmonizing regulatory standards among member states. The rise of digital trade posed new challenges and opportunities for international trade agreements, prompting efforts to develop rules and frameworks that address the unique characteristics of the digital economy. Negotiations focused on issues such as cross-border data flows, electronic commerce, and digital services, aiming to ensure a conducive environment for digital innovation while protecting consumer rights and data privacy. The WTO's Joint Statement Initiative on E-commerce brought together a group of member states to negotiate new rules for digital trade, including provisions on data localization, electronic signatures, and cybersecurity. These negotiations aim to establish a multilateral framework that balanced the interests of different stakeholders and facilitated global trade in the digital age. The reevaluation of trade policies in the 2020s also placed greater emphasis on sustainability, inclusivity, and responsible business practices. Trade agreements increasingly incorporated provisions on labor rights, environmental protection, and corporate social responsibility, reflecting growing public and regulatory scrutiny of global supply chains and production methods. The EU-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, for example, included commitments to sustainable development and climate action, promoting trade that supported environmental objectives and upheld international labor standards. Similarly, the USMCA introduced new provisions on labor rights and environmental protection, aiming to address concerns about the impact of trade on workers and the environment. Despite the progress made in reevaluating and updating trade policies in the 2020s, significant challenges remain on the horizon. This chapter examines the ongoing challenges facing global trade governance and outlines potential future directions for international trade agreements and policies. The rapid pace of technological innovation presents both opportunities and challenges for global trade governance. Digital technologies, including artificial intelligence, blockchain, and the Internet of Things, are transforming business models and supply chains, creating new avenues for trade and economic growth. However, the proliferation of digital trade also raises complex regulatory issues, such as data privacy, cybersecurity, and intellectual property rights. Governments must develop adaptive regulatory frameworks that foster innovation while protecting consumer rights and ensuring fair competition in the digital economy. The imperative to promote sustainable development and build resilience in global trade remains a pressing priority. Climate change, biodiversity loss, and resource depletion pose significant risks to economic stability and social well-being, necessitating concerted efforts to integrate sustainability goals into trade policies. Trade agreements can play a crucial role in advancing sustainable development objectives by promoting green technologies, supporting renewable energy investments, and encouraging sustainable production and consumption practices. Initiatives such as the AFCFTA's commitment to environmental sustainability and the EU's Green Deal demonstrate the potential for trade policies to contribute positively to global efforts to address climate change and achieve sustainable development goals. Addressing inequalities in global trade remains a fundamental challenge for trade governance in the 2020s and beyond. Despite the benefits of trade liberalization and economic integration, disparities in income distribution, access to opportunities, and social welfare persist within and between countries. The reevaluation and changes in international trade agreements and policies during the 2020s reflect a dynamic and evolving global landscape. Economic realities, geopolitical dynamics, technological advancements, and concerns over sovereignty and security have shaped the trajectory of global trade governance, prompting nations to adapt and innovate in response to new challenges and opportunities. Looking ahead, the future of global trade will be defined by the ability of countries to navigate geopolitical uncertainties, harness the potential of digital technologies, promote sustainable development, and foster inclusive growth. Multilateral cooperation and dialogue will remain essential in addressing global challenges and advancing shared interests in a rapidly changing world. As countries continue to reassess their trade policies and priorities, the need for collective action and collaboration will be paramount. By working together to strengthen the rules-based trading system, uphold international norms and standards, and promote economic resilience and inclusivity, nations can build a more prosperous, sustainable, and equitable global economy for future generations.